Chapter 9 Intro. I am buried with Christ. This sermon carries with it two messages. The first is no excuses. The second is about using the cathartic act of baptism to propel us into a new way of living. If we are ever to make any progress in our spiritual lives, or if we truly want a change, a lasting and impactful change, any and all excuses must be eliminated. Excuses hold us back. Excuses stifle our growth. Once we decide that things must change, and we are dedicated to the idea, if we eliminate excuses and actively initiate ourselves into a new way of living, a better life than we ever thought possible can be obtained. Excuses are easy, but excuses simultaneously destroy any progress we have previously made and prevent any future advancement or development. Excuses may seem relatively harmless, but they cause damage to our lives by threatening our personal growth. Sometimes we think that our excuses are the perfect reasons why we don't accomplish our goals or why we can't get certain things done. But in reality, the only reason that we are unable to succeed is because we allow ourselves to accept excuses. When left unchecked, excuses can become the norm of our lives and can cause us to settle for far less than we would otherwise obtain. I am no stranger to excuses. I have made them in my life and have held myself back because of them. What I have found is that if I start to make excuses, it is really because of some underlying fear. One of the biggest areas of my life that I was keen on making excuses in was my physical health. When I was growing up, I dealt with a large amount of self-doubt and in general negative thoughts towards myself. Every time I looked into the mirror, I would just see all of the things wrong with my body. I never really suffered from obesity, but I was overweight for many years. Before I made the proper changes to my psychology and my determination, I was fond of making excuses for why I was not going to do any exercise. In my late teens and early 20s, one of my favorite excuses was I didn't have any equipment to use, and gym memberships are expensive, so I used that as my excuse to not exercise. Another excuse I liked to use when it came to exercise was the weather. I would say that if it was raining, or too cold, or too hot, or too humid, or windy, or too anything that I could not go outdoors for a bit of activity. There was never a time when I could not find an excuse for not leaving the comfort of the great indoors. If it wasn't money that was keeping me from activity, and if it wasn't the weather that kept me inside, it was the famous "I'm too tired." On the rare occasion that my confidence was not completely absent, I would all out lie to myself and say I didn't need to exercise. If I coughed or sneezed, had a bit of congestion, had a white tongue, or any other indication that I was coming down with something, I would of course use the excuse, "I think I'm getting sick." The fact was that most of the time, I would have rather been watching television or playing video games than getting exercise. Another excuse I like to use was, "I'm not a professional bodybuilder or an athlete, so there's no reason why I should have to suffer through a workout." I wasn't completely against the idea of working out all the time. There were times that I would think to myself, maybe today I will go to the gym, but on those rare occasions I would eventually come to the conclusion that I can just go tomorrow. And thus the cycle would continue. One of the nastiest excuses I would allow myself to accept was that only those that are truly great, only those massively successful people work out, and I was not successful or in any way great, so I would tell myself, "Don't bother working out, you're just not worth it." In my mind, I had a fear that I was somehow not worthy to be healthy, and I thought that I was not deserving of the greatest possible physique. My mindset had become accustomed to making excuses, and it had caused me to become psychologically abusive to myself. I thought that my excuses were harmless, but in reality, they were holding me back from being the person God designed me to be. God does not want us to live in fear. God does not want us to make excuses in any aspect of our life. It doesn't matter if it is in our physicality or mentality or psychology, our finances or our spiritual lives. There is no room for excuses. When we make a decision to take our spiritual development to the next level and we want to make a lasting change, we cannot let ourselves be satisfied with making excuses. This does not have to be a scary thing either. Sometimes in the past, I have been reluctant to change or unwilling to make a change because of the fear associated with the unknown, but this is completely unwarranted. Once we have made the decision to live with a purpose, there is no going back. Do not allow fear and excuses to run your life.